All right. Welcome to another edition of the Hot Seat. This is our seventh episode, and this is going to be our college football edition preview show. And with me, you see that I got a special guest because both of my co-hosts, weren't able to make it this week. So we're going to have my guy, and I'm going to let he introduce himself because I wouldn't be able to do his introduction justice.
Hey, what's going on, folks? My name is Chris Schwartfeger. I'm a chef owner of Bacon and Cake and Food Truck, and total sports addict, college football addict, NFL football addict. I mean, I can talk sports till your ear falls off. So I'm happy to fill in, and let's get it popping.
All right. So the first topic we're going to talk about is with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Do you think that Alabama will repeat as national champions?
I think with their opening matchup in USC is a great challenge. They have always been good about having a quarterback that can just manage a game. SEC is always so strong, and if they can run through like they usually do, it just depends on who the top four is at the end of the road. They keep saying that this running back coming in is the best of the last three, and obviously two of the last three have won Heisman's.
Yeah.
So if the kid lives up to his bill and their defense holds up per usual, there's just no telling. They always get that big flag on their back just because of their current dynasty, if you want to call it that. But we'll just have to see.
All right. So I personally don't think Bama's going to repeat this year, and the reason being is LSU with Leonard Fournette, which last season, I don't know if you remember, he's putting up video game numbers at one point. It was like the first 7 games or so, he was like obliterating every rushing record, that there was. And then he just kind of fell off after that. I think it was due to injuries or just facing better competition. But I think that this year they got the most talented group because pretty much all their main core on defense and offense is coming back. And they have a real good shot of beating Bama this year. And those two teams are really going to be probably 1A and 1B on who has the best chance to win the national title.
Yeah. I think Ole Miss has a good shot within that SEC situation. They were the only ones to hand Alabama that loss last year.
Yeah.
Chad Kelly's coming back. I mean, that dude threw for over 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, and rushed for over 500 yards in the SEC. And that's pretty solid numbers going up against that competition. But yeah, like you said, man, Fournette, man, he's nasty. He got banged up at the end of the year last year, but the thing is, he's coming into this year banged up. He's already been missing practices with his ankle. So we'll see what he has to bring. 22 solid touchdowns last year. That's a pretty good number.
What do you think about Tennessee as a dark horse team to win the SEC?
Man, I'm not on that not on that trail. I literally, on my notes, it says Tennessee, and then it says OR circled for overrated. Overrated.
Tell me about that. Why do you think they're overrated?
Man, they play Appalachian State to open.
Yeah.
For one, they don't. They hung in with OU last year, but they never took any game and beat any good team last year. And I just think it's a lot of hype, man. They're prove me wrong, but I feel like it's an overrated SEC team out of the group. Along with that, like where my notes says next to that is Auburn is the one who should be rated at that. If they're going to rate Tennessee at what they're at 9. I think that's a joke.
Well, why are you so high on Auburn? I'm not really high on Auburn at all. I feel like they just haven't been as good as advertised ever since that they won the national title.
Yeah, I mean, I think their schedule kind of works out a little bit. They they've got they've still got to go over the main people, but I just think they're running back with where'd it go? Oh, didn't take his name out. Never mind. But anyways, I feel like they have a solider squad than Tennessee. If I was going to rate an SEC team that high, it wouldn't be Tennessee. I'd rather have Auburn there. But we'll see what's advertised.
So you think that Auburn is going to face the winner of the Bama LSU game in the SEC title game? Or do you still think Tennessee is gonna face Bama or LSU in the SEC title game?
I could see Auburn getting there, man. I know they start the season off with Clemson, but I don't know. I just feel like Tennessee just wouldn't carry it all the way. They've always been a letdown.
Do you think Florida's going to finally get over the hump, or you think there's going to be another disappointing year for them?
They've got a good chance, man. I didn't watch a lot of them last year. I'm not real sure what they're bringing in. Is this what the second year for this coach, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, what was the record last year? I'm trying to pull it up real quick.
I can't remember, but I know it wasn't that good. I know the last few years they've probably been the third best team in Florida.
So here's what I'm seeing is they don't play Alabama in their schedule. They are man, they're at Tennessee, they're at Vanderbilt. They have LSU at home, Missouri at home, Georgia at home, at Arkansas, South Carolina's at home, and then at Florida State to end the season. Man, with that schedule, they could sneak in. You know what I mean? They don't play Alabama at all, and that's no Texas A&M. And their out of conference is Massachusetts, North Texas, and Presbyterian. Yeah, Florida might sneak them in.
Yeah, one thing I want to say is, who you think is going to win the SEC this year? Do you think it's going to be Bama, LSU, Tennessee, Auburn, or is it going to be some dark horse team that we haven't talked about?
Man, the SEC, I've got to put Ole Miss or Alabama in it. I really do. That's if Ole Miss defense plays up to it and Chad Kelly plays up to his numbers. I mean, what he threw for over 4,000 yards last year, 31 touchdowns. Like I said, I mean, I'm kind of riding the Ole Miss train this year for SEC.
Okay, so you got Ole Miss. That's a little shocking. I mean, I can't wait to hear what your four playoff teams are going to be. But we'll talk about that in a second once we talk about all the Power 5 teams and who you think is going to be the contenders. But the next thing we're going to talk about is, what do you think of the Big Ten this year? They probably have the deepest conference this year. They probably got 4 contending teams, more than probably any. I mean, tied with SEC of most contending teams in the conference for a potential playoff berth. Which we got, Michigan, Ohio State. We also have Iowa, and then we also have Ohio State too. So of those 4 teams, who do you think is going to win the Big Ten? And why?
Ohio State lost a lot of players. I feel like, honestly, Michigan's a little overrated just on the John Harbaugh factor. It's only his second year. Yes, they excelled last year. I think kind of overexceeded their expectations. I would love to see Michigan, kind of to be there. Michigan State, man, with D'Antoni, you can't count them out. Honestly, I think Iowa, that quarterback's returning, correct? I didn't grab that note. They have the same quarterback coming back from Iowa last year.
I don't. I have to double check. I don't think so, but don't quote me on that.
If they do, They stand a better chance. But I think I got to go Michigan State just with how many players Ohio State lost and still how young Michigan's team is with the coaching staff and everything going on. Um, but I think Michigan could sneak through and pull it off. But yeah, I'd say Michigan State. In like I said, yeah, maybe Michigan pulls it off.
Yeah,
They were one bad punt away from doing it to him last year.
yeah, that was a crazy game actually. Yeah, I think that Michigan has, in my opinion, has the best chance, but it wouldn't. I mean, people are high on Ohio State for some reason. I don't know why, because like you said, they're missing a lot of guys from last season,
It's
and
the Urban Meyer factor.
but I think that Ohio State's season will really be determined by how well they do against the Oklahoma Sooners. I think that game is really going to be the gut check game, the game where we find out both teams how good they really are. Because I mean, the OU may beat Houston. We'll talk about that in a second, but we're not going to really know because they're supposed to beat Houston because they got more talent. But when they're playing a team like Ohio State, which has similar talent but maybe not as experienced players, you're going to see who outcoaches who.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, I think it's the high ranking has a lot to do with the Urban Meyer factor and just what he brings to the table as a coach. The dude has put his name on the map, quick within his career. So, yeah, it's like I said, it's Iowa. I really don't see them having quite the season they did last year. Northwestern maybe sneaks in a little again. I think they had a 10-win season last year. So maybe they come in and spoil some situations. But I still think it's front heavy with the top three, the classic three of the Big Ten of Ohio State, Michigan State.
Yeah, and I think I was in the best position to maybe sneak in one of those playoff spots just because they are in the weaker division. Like the other teams are all in the same division, so they're going to beat each other up. Yeah. So I think it just favors Iowa of those four, and then obviously the winner out of that other division, between Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State is going to obviously be in the Big Ten championship, and whoever wins out of Iowa, presumably, and then the winner of the other division is going to probably go to the playoff.
Yeah.
So we're going to shift to probably the weakest conference of the Power Five, and this is the Pac-12. Who do you think is going to be the best team out of the Pac-12 this upcoming season?
Well, I for one, challenge you on that statement of weakest conference. I honestly feel like the Big 12 is the weakest conference this year, but we can talk about that in a second. No, I mean, USC's got high hopes with their new second-year head coach. Other than that, Oregon's ranked at 24. They've got a new quarterback. They struggled last year when their quarterback went down. Ever since Chip Kelly left, they haven't been quite the team they used to be. But UCLA, they've got a Heisman hopeful with their quarterback, but they lost a little bit on defense. And then Stanford, I probably got to give them the most credit. They are ranked high, but they've been real solid. They opened the season against K-State, so it's kind of a tie into the Big 12. And they've got that little stud there, Christian McCaffrey. 2,019 yards rushing last year with almost 500 yards receiving and 1,200 yards in kick return game. You're talking over 3,800 yards of offense with one player. He's obviously a high Heisman candidate. If he comes in and wrecks it like he did this year, I don't think he'll be used in the kick game as much as he was last year, due to him being so valuable to the true offense. Hopefully they've, brought another skill player in to kind of fill that role. But it's top heavy in a sense, but Washington is still a threat. Washington State with what's his name from Texas Tech? What's Washington State's coach? I just lost his name in my head. But anyways, I don't think it's the weakest conference, honestly. I would put them above the Big 12 and possibly the ACC. That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, I personally think that the best team in the Pac-12 this year will definitely be Stanford. But to kind of preface what you said about the Pac-12 not being the best, not being the weakest conference, I think that the winner of the Pac-12 is going to have 2 losses. And
Really?
yeah, I think Stanford is far and away the best team, but we'll find out when USC plays Bama, because I feel like USC is probably the second best team, but I feel like there's going to be such a large gap between the first best and the second best team that top and bottom is probably going to be pretty evenly like spread out compared to other conferences. But I just don't think that there's not going to be a single team. There's not going to be a single team from this conference that's going to be in the playoff.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, unless Stanford runs the table, because I mean they're out of conference is Rice and Kansas State. They play Notre Dame per usual, but I'm not real high on Notre Dame this season either. So if Stanford runs the table completely, they obviously they have the right to be in the conversation. But like you said, if you see the winner of the Pac-12 being a 2-loss team, then yeah, they won't even be in the conversation.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to go over, since you already talked about the Big 12 before this point, is the Big 12. You said that's the weakest conference of the Power 5. Who do you think is going to win the Big 12 this year? Because I think that you're going to probably say something that's probably going to piss off a lot of Sooner fans. I just have a feeling. But I want your take on it, because what I'm going to say and what you're probably going to say is probably going to be 2 different answers.
No, I mean I'm going to say it's 2 different answers. I think fan-wise, who I would like to win the conference clearly it would be Texas, but I really think OU is. They hit this ground running against Houston and Ohio State. I think they might just push all the way through the end of the season. Bringing back Baker Mayfield and P. Ryan and Nixon and these big receivers they've got, man. I just, if OU gets off to a hot start, that's when they usually sweep the table. And that's all I see happening for Big 12 championship.
Personally, for me, I think the team you got to watch out for is TCU. I think that the reason why I think that TCU actually has a better chance of winning this conference than OU does is just strength of schedule specifically. OU, to start the season, has probably one of the toughest schedules in the country. They not only and if not the best. They start the season playing Houston. We're going to talk about that in a second. And then they got to face Ohio State, which is, in many people's opinions, a contender to be in the college football playoff. And then you got, in a few weeks after that, you got to play Texas, and they never that is never an easy matchup for them. I mean, the last 3 years, OU has lost to Texas, when Texas has been a terrible football team. And
they show up.
Speaking of Texas, I mean, you see this poster right here. So I have a lot of media. People in the media are disrespecting Texas, thinking they're going to have 6 or 7 losses. I don't think that's going to happen, because I feel like Charlie Strong is going to have this team ready, and I think they're going to be an 8-4 team this year. That's a reasonable expectation. I think they will beat the Sooners this year again, because last year they had no business beating OU. OU was a way better team.
Oh yeah,
most people thought they were out. I actually told a buddy of mine, I was like, Texas is going to beat OU. The only reason why they're going to beat them is because they've been so terrible this year. This is the one game they're going to come out to play, and OU is not going to take them seriously. And that's usually what happens. OU every season has a letdown game. Every year. It's always a team that they should be beating, they should beat, and they don't win the game. They're probably going to beat Houston. They may or may not. I think the Ohio State game is probably going to be their toughest game this whole season, in my opinion.
It's a coin toss.
I really don't know. We'll talk about that later. But I think that there's probably 4 games that OU really has to worry about, and that is the Houston game. They got to worry about Ohio State. They got to worry about TCU, and they got to worry about Texas. Maybe Baylor too, because the Sooners struggle against teams with a prolific offensive attacks. Because they just don't. I don't know why they just don't really play well against spread offense teams. They just really don't.
Yeah. I mean, as far as Texas goes, though, I mean, you got them losing to Notre Dame. What about Cal?
I haven't beaten Cal. Cal.
So obviously, so then Oklahoma State. What do you got?
I haven't beaten Oklahoma State.
Okay, but you're saying they're going to take OU?
Yep, they're going to take OU.
Okay, so that puts them at still at one loss. Obviously, beat Iowa State, beat Kansas State, Baylor.
They're going to lose to Baylor for sure.
Okay. If Baylor's offense is rolling by that point in the season, I can see it. It's deep in the season where they can get their momentum. Texas Tech, got to beat them. West Virginia.
I think we lose to West Virginia too.
Okay. Kansas, that's a win.
Yep.
And then you're high on TCU, so that's your 4th loss.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
But you can flip the OU or TCU. I think we're going to win one of those 2 games. I don't think we're going to lose to both TCU and Oklahoma, but I feel like if we lose to Oklahoma, we'll probably beat TCU and vice versa. Yeah. Because I just feel like OU is probably of the top team in the Big 12. OU is really the most beatable just because of the rivalry factor. Just like all the other teams that have rivalries, they always play well against their rival. I mean, it don't matter how bad or good the other team is, but it's good for Texas to be good, and I hope that Texas is a good football team this year because it's good for the Big 12. Because while they're down, it hurts everyone else. I mean, you see that if OU is not, contending for a playoff, the other teams don't have any chance of making the playoff because Texas is not carrying the conference. If there was 3 teams at the top like they are with some of these other conferences are 4, then you would have a TCU have a legit chance to make the playoff. The only way they're going to make the playoff is to run the table and be undefeated. And I don't think that there's a single team in the Big 12 is going to run the table and have no losses this season.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's also kind of why they're talking expansion and stuff to make the conference stronger. Bring in a couple of these schools that are, boosting right now and, get back to at least our 12 teams. I'm not against a 14-team conference. It just depends on who we bring in. It's kind of been a hot mess since we lost, that group of Colorado, Nebraska, Missouri, Texas A&M. Baylor and TCU have done a great job, I would say, of excelling their programs since they've come into the conference. And, that OU Houston game start the season, some people say it's not a play-in game for Houston, but if they come in and show out, they make their case.
That's a good segue to our next point. So we're going to talk about Houston because they're not from the Power 5 conferences, and they're the only Power 5 team that outside the Power 5 teams that has a chance to make the playoff. And
they're the only non-Power 5 conference in the top 25.
Yeah. So and they have a chance to do it if they can run the table and beat OU and beat Louisville. They have a great chance.
Yeah, because their conference schedule in the All-American,
the American Conference, yeah.
Tulsa might give them a chance, give them a run for their money.
So we're gonna move on to our next point, and it's kind of a good segue. And we're gonna talk about all the big games that are going on. I want to get your opinion on who's gonna win the game and why. So first, we're gonna talk about the OU Houston game. That's probably one of the biggest games of the weekend. That's a game that people are hyping up, and this has probably the second most important game of the weekend because it has so much of implications as far as the playoff. I personally think that OU is going to win. People are probably shocked that I'm not saying Houston's going to win, but I just think that this is the first game of the season. OU's going to come out ready. This isn't like a trap game where they're not going to come prepared for it. And I think that it'll be closer than what people think. I think OU's going to beat them by 3 points. I think it's going to come down to a bunch of trading, points left and right. It's probably going to be, I think, 35-32 type game. I want your opinion on, do you think that OU's going to win? Do you think they're going to lose?
Yeah.
And how close you think the game's going to go?
I definitely got OU in the game. I think the biggest thing it comes down to is the run game for both teams. OU comes out, establishes P. Ryan and Mixon, and then starts dumping it over the top. Houston comes in. Man, I don't think if they can't get that running game a little bit off, not that it has to be a strong running game, but if Oklahoma can just shut them down like that and then contain Mr. Ward Jr., I think OU honestly wins by at least 2 touchdowns.
Interesting.
I've got them at least, 36-21. I think OU's defense shows up and just puts it on them.
All right, so that's interesting. You said that, but so the next game we're going to talk about is the Georgia-North Carolina game. This is another big game, in my opinion. I have North Carolina win this game. I have them winning 21-14, actually. Not a high-scoring game, but I feel like this is going to be another great game to watch, a must-see game to watch, and I want your opinion on, do you think that Georgia can pull the upset?
It depends what you call it, how you call it an upset with those two teams. They're so closely ranked to start the season. Typically Georgia's past is more history than North Carolina. But I am on your side of North Carolina pulling off the win. 2 great defensive teams. If Nick Chubb comes out strong after that injury last year, that could give North Carolina trouble. Obviously, he's a talented back. For his injury, he had 8.1 yards per carry. If he comes out and starts doing his thing, then North Carolina might really be in trouble. But I really like North Carolina's quarterback. I like their offense. I definitely like their defense. So I wouldn't call it an upset either way. The way these teams are kind of going right now. But I'm on your side, North Carolina. Somewhere in that 20 something to teen range.
And the next game is probably a battle of 2 top 5 programs of all time. We got USC and Bama. Bama starts their title defense, and we will see just how good they really are. Yeah. I think this game, of all the games, will probably be the most surprising game of the weekend, because people are expecting Bama to beat them by 30 points, 40 points, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be just like how it was last season, where they won the game, but they didn't really beat the team in convincing fashion. I think it'll be, a 31-21 type game. I don't think it's going to be, any runaway game like people are thinking it's going to be. People are disrespecting USC as a program. They have one of the best recruiting pools in the country in California, so that they're not going to just roll over and die, and they're actually going to come out to play because they know they're playing the defending champs.
Absolutely, yeah. USC is known for showing up for big games, just in their history alone. But they're bringing back a lot of players. I like USC's chances in this game as far as at least keeping it close, if not pulling it off. Like I said earlier, man, Alabama's got another one of them who knows their name quarterbacks starting off the season, and if USC's defense can disrupt that method, they got a real good chance of taking that game by a few points. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, like you said, some people are saying, but then again, Nick Saban could have that train on that track going 80 miles an hour before that ball kicks off. Who knows? He's done it before.
And what do you think about the Ole Miss Florida State game? This is probably the best game of the whole weekend. This is like the main event. This is like, the prime time game. This is a game that everybody wants to see, because this game, if this game wasn't going on, everybody would be hyped about Oklahoma Houston. People are going to be watching that game too, but this game actually has the most playoff implications of
Yeah.
any game that's going to be coming on probably in the next few weeks, because you got Ole Miss and Florida State duking it out. And this game will really determine which one of these teams is going to be in the playoff hunt and which team is not, because whoever loses this game is probably going to be out of the playoff hunt, because I don't see Florida State losing this game and then beating Clemson, because they still got to worry about Clemson, towards the end of the in October 29th. That game is going to be big too. But this will be that first step on people seeing, is Florida State the real deal? Because we're going to talk about who's going to be in the top 4 too in a second. But I want your opinion on who you think is going to win this game, because you're big on Ole Miss. So do you think Ole Miss is going to pull off this win, or do you think Florida State is going to come into play and win? Because I think Florida State is going to take care of business. But
I'm torn. I really am. I am high on Ole Miss, like you said, but yeah, if Florida State shows up per usual, Devin Cook is informed right off the bat. And I think Florida State has that advantage, just with the defense a little bit. Ole Miss lost a little bit on the defense through the draft and whatnot. But yeah, that's actually the one note I did have it. It's the Monday night game. That's what it is. So I've got to take FSU close, but I'll take FSU. And like you said, that'll throw the wrench in the sprogs for Ole Miss's chances at the championship.
And the last game that I can't wait to watch, and this is because probably because I'm a homer, but I think this is actually going to be probably one of the top games of the whole weekend. This is the Sunday night game, is Texas Notre Dame. I think that Texas is going to surprise a lot of people, and this game alone is going to determine Texas this season, because we're going to find out real quick, because Texas has a brutal schedule to start the season, and we're going to find out if they're the real deal or if Charlie Strong is going to get fired. Because I feel like if they get lose 3 of the first 4 games, which is very possible, like with their schedule, they could lose 3 of the first 4 games. And he could be out, after the OU loss if they lose against OU too. So I think that he's going to have him come out to play. And it wouldn't shock me if Texas actually wins the game. And this would pretty much put a wrench to whatever I said earlier about OU and TCU being the favorites. Because if they can beat Notre Dame and beat Cal and even have a possibility of beating OU, they would have a great chance to win the conference. Because the schedule to end the season is nowhere near as tough or as difficult as it is to start the season.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on that side, man. With especially with what went down with Notre Dame, a couple weekends ago, how many starters they lost? Their number 1 cornerback, their backup cornerback. They lost a starting linebacker, a 3rd string wide receiver.
And they're going to be shuffling 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And exactly. That's where I was going with that. Yeah. We're going to play 2 quarterbacks because they both are fit to play. Whatever that mentality is, good luck with that. Yeah, man, if Texas, man, I think this is their time to beat Notre Dame, out of the past few years they played them. And, like you said, man, if they do that, hit the ground running, sweep, get OU, then that may not be a 4-loss season. It may be a 3 or 2-loss season.
That's what I hope. Because it's just good for the Big 12, and I think that's the reason why there's not teams lining up to join the Big 12, because right now it's just OU and then the rest of the field. Every once in a while you got a TCU or a Baylor or something like that, but you need a high-profile team with OU to sell your conference, because every other conference has that, except maybe the Pac-12. The Pac-12 really only has, USC. But still, you got, but they're more of a basketball conference than a football conference.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that we need Texas to be good. So the Sooner fans actually probably realize that too. They know that they can't constantly be going to the playoffs without Texas being good, because if the Sooners have one loss or even 2 losses, they're out. Especially 2 losses.
Yeah.
So we need them to be good. And another game that I think that's going to be interesting to watch. And I don't know if you know about this, but let's see what I got. I don't know if I got my notes or not. I was okay. I don't have the game, but what do you think of Notre Dame? Do you think Notre Dame is going to be one of the four teams in the playoff, or do you think that
Nah,
the Tech?
I think they're out this year, man, with everything going on and the whole two quarterback situation. Man, I really don't. I'm not high on them this year whatsoever. Pretty much, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, they're definitely on the backlist of teams I like to watch. But nah, man, I'm not high on them this year. They've got too much going on internally for me to put them in the playoffs.
Okay, so we're gonna shift over to who you think your four playoff teams are. I want to get your opinion on who you think those four teams are and why, and then I'll tell you my list because I think our list is going to be a little bit different, especially in the Big Ten, especially because you can pick probably four different teams and you'll probably be correct on maybe all four of them.
Man, I think top four for me, I've got to go Clemson. I think they get back in again for the third time in a row. Um, OU, if they only lose to Texas, because I think they can play their way back in. Or even if, I mean, I'll just say OU if they have one loss. Obviously, if they sweep the table, they're a shoe in. If they only have one loss, they're in. I've got to give Stanford a chance, man. Their schedule pays off, and I'm still high on Ole Miss if they beat Florida State. So Clemson, OU, Stanford, and Ole Miss.
Okay, so I'm the only one I'm not really high on. You said Stanford, right? You said Stanford. Yeah, I don't believe Stanford's going to be anywhere near the playoff. I don't even think they're going to be in. They're going to barely be in the top 25, in my opinion. I think the teams that are going to be in the playoff this year are going to be LSU, Michigan, Clemson, and OU.
Okay.
I feel like those four teams right there are probably going to be the talk of of each of their conferences, respective conferences, because I think that the LSU Bama game is really going to be probably the mother of all games. I think that's going to be must see TV. Definitely be prime time. We're definitely going to be watching that game. That game will probably be a determining national champion right there because I feel like Michigan and OU are probably really similar teams. I feel like they got a lot of the same type of pieces going for them, and I think that OU will be best matched up in the playoff against Clemson than they would Bama. I don't think they want to play Bama in the semifinal. I think they want to save Bama if they play them in the final because Clemson, even though they've kicked OU's butts the last two times they've faced them, I think they want another chance at Clemson, and I think the people that vote in the teams that are going to be
they'll make that happen.
They'll make it happen. Yeah, and then Bama, Michigan has a lot of implications as far as two top 10. Top 10. Programs. And Michigan will finally be back in that national spotlight because when's the last time that we've seen the Michigan Wolverines be in the national spotlight and be back again? Like it's been several years. Like there have been times where we thought Michigan was back, even last year.
Right.
But then they had three losses against teams that they probably only should have lost against one of those teams.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even need to be talking about the Michigan State game.
Yeah.
That game was crazy.
I can see what you're stepping in with LSU, man. I mean, they only lost two. They lost 2 starters on defense and 3 starters on, 2 starters on offense and 3 starters on defense. So they're returning most of their team by all means. And like I said at the beginning, it's all on Leonard Fournette's ankle at this point to start the season. If he's healthy, then by God, they'll hook it up. But I think they're really relying on one player, and that's my biggest hang up with LSU getting to the final dance.
You may be right. I mean, but even considering that, this is probably their most talented team that Les Miles has ever had. Like the problem with Les Miles teams had them in the defense. but they've never had a quarterback that's been adequate enough to get them over the
Exactly.
top. Because every time they've lost to Bama, it really usually hasn't been by that many points, and it's because they never had the quarterback play. While Bama always had that quarterback, that game manager that actually didn't do anything to ruin the game for them, and they just let the run game
Just did enough.
and
Just did enough to win.
yeah. So I think it'd be a good season, and I mean we could have a completely different discussion after this week because I feel like there's going to be a few upsets that are going to happen this week. What team do you think in the top 25 that's going to get upset this week? That's going to shock a lot of people.
Who takes the biggest L? I think it goes back to our Notre Dame Texas talk. I think I think that if that happens, that's the biggest surprise. The top 25. If Auburn comes in and pulls it off against Clemson, that'd be my other one. But other than that, I don't really see. You got Michigan plays Hawaii. FSU, Ole Miss to start it off. But like I said, either way, that one's not an upset for either team. That's just two top 10 teams. But yeah, I say if Texas beats Notre Dame, or if Auburn pulls it off against Clemson, that's where I see the biggest two upsets in the top 25.
I mean, going when more and more I think about it, I mean, I do think that Texas has a great shot against Notre Dame, but I think a potential upset, and I'm kind of flip flopping the more I think about it. I think USC may actually upset Bama. Like people may think I'm crazy with this, but
Yeah.
I just feel like they're just primed for an upset. Like they've been so dominant for so long, and I just feel like USC is just good enough to get that upset. They may not win the Pac-12 or anything like that, but I think this is that one game where they're going to be the talk of the town. People going to be talking about them. They're going to catapult to the top 10 or whatever. Like there's always a team every year that has that one big win, and then they jump up the rankings, and people will be like, "Oh wow, they're going to win national title, or they have a chance for national title. Oh, USC's back."
Then they take 2 L's.
Yeah. I mean, look at the year that Ole Miss and Mississippi State were both in the top 5. I think they were in the top 3. I think that year.
I think you're correct. I think Ole Miss was at 1 and Mississippi State was at 3.
Yeah.
And, then they both just turned around and got their butts kicked.
So I think it's gonna be a great season, and I appreciate everyone watching our show. But lastly, before I go, I want you to again plug your stuff, plug your social media.
What's your? I want to know your Heisman. Who's your Heisman winner?
Oh, my Heisman winner. I think Fournette's gonna win the Heisman this year.
Fournette?
I think Fournette's gonna take it. I think it's gonna be a runaway sweep.
I think Deshaun Watson is gonna bring the heat again. I mean, over 4,000 yards passing, over 1,000 yards rushing last year. Man, I think if he brings that heat again, Fournette will have to run for over 2,500, I would say, for him to take over Deshaun Watson if Watson puts up numbers like last year. But
I think it's gonna be a 2-team race. I think them and maybe you may have a Baker Mayfield may try to sneak in there.
yeah,
But it really is going to be determined on kind of if the Sooners have an undefeated. If they run the table and go undefeated, I think Baker Mayfield wins it running away. But like I said before, I don't think no one in the Big 12 is going to have any just a single goose egg on their loss on the loss column. So we'll just have to see about that.
as long as Baker stays unconcussed, then he might have a chance.
Yeah, so plug in your stuff so people can follow you, find out where they can find you, and also before we go, tell people about your business because I'm sure that most of our listeners don't know what you do, and so they can maybe check out your stuff if they ever be in the Oklahoma City area.
Absolutely. I own a food truck called Bacon and Cakin'. We do ultimate pancake sandwiches, bacon infused sliders as our lunch and dinner menu. We travel all around, do parties and events. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Basically, bacon, your favorite meat, with the second N, Cakin. So Bacon and Cakin'. And give us a follow on whatever social media you prefer, and come check us out and get some good food.
Yeah, follow them, Bacon Cakin'. You heard it. And also, if you want to follow me and check out my sports-related stuff, you can follow me at realsport101.com. You can also check out my website, camperry.co. And you can also follow me on my social media at CamPerry21 on Twitter, and also CPScott1 on my Instagram. And also, if you want to find me on my Snapchat, you can find me at CamPerryTV. So I appreciate you guys checking in on our college football preview show. Next week, we're going to talk about more topics. We're actually going to be preparing for the NFL season, which I'm sure all you guys are happy that that's finally starting. And we can also talk about a little bit fantasy football, because I'm sure all you guys are ready to hear who I think is going to be the bust sleepers and the best players for this fantasy football season. So I appreciate you guys tuning in.
Welcome
And
horns.
yeah.